It was the 16th of March. I received a phone call to respond to a scene. I think it was about 3:30 in the afternoon. We had an unidentified white female, late 20s or maybe early 30s. And she was partially nude from the waist up, laying over in the wood line behind the Ecker drugstore. She was face down with one of her arms, I think, was underneath her. Upon examination of the body, they found that she had been strangled. I noticed she had a star tattooed on her body, and I kind of kiddingly said to the detective, you know, I said, back in the 70s, there was a girl who was dating Gene Simmons who had a tattoo in the very same spot. She was a centerfold for Playboy. And I says, what are the odds of that?
Star Stow was the Playmate of the Month in February 1977. It was a huge deal to be a centerfold back in the 70s. The sexual revolution was really at its height. Almost 6 million people were reading Playboy every month. Just a layout in a magazine would make you much more famous than it would today. And Star would have been at the center of that.
I worked at the Playboy Mansion West in Holmby Hills from 1978 to 1980. I was a hostess at the front door. I would guide people through the party. And once you were in that house, you had to play the game, and Star was very good at it. She loved the whole idea of the Playboy world. It was everything, and she was going to climb to the top.
The beginning of Star's story must have felt like an absolute dream come true. But she had no idea about the dark side of Playboy or the way things were going to go.
She was from Little Rock, Arkansas, and she had a small-town girl vibe. And she had aspirations of being a dancer and a musician.
She got out as soon as she could. She wanted to explore, and she wanted to be in a rock group. So as soon as she was 18, she left for Las Vegas.
It was 1975, and she was at the Sahara Hotel, and there's Gene Simmons without his makeup. I don't know how she recognized him, but she did, and they got to talking, and they kind of took a shine to each other.
She said he was just an adorable guy, really nice, down to earth, not like his persona on Kiss. They hit it off almost immediately, and it turned into a 3-year-long relationship.
She was crazy about him, and he was crazy about her.
You look at Gene Simmons and Star Stow and you think, well, they sort of were part of writing the original book on how to be a famous couple in La La Land.
She's a young, small-town girl hanging out with some of the biggest rock stars in the world. It just must have felt like such an incredible experience.
Gene was a big act at the peak of his career, and she was everything to him.
And it wasn't just a romance between the two. There was actually a romance between Star and the band. She was their muse. In his own autobiography, Gene Simmons takes credit for suggesting to Star that she send her materials to Playboy.
Gene had sent the pictures in, and there was a scout that went out, then reported back, and from there it just spiraled.
So many beautiful women were trying out to be Playmates each month, and if one of the photos would have come along with a recommendation from a rock star like Gene Simmons, that would have definitely stood out.
Hef saw the pictures and loved it and thought it was great and wanted to make her a centerfold.
That was her big, big moment. She was flown to Chicago because that's where all the main shoots for the girls was always done.
In the 1970s, Chicago was still the home of Playboy and its main hub. The Playboy Mansion in Chicago was definitely just as extravagant and decadent and crazy as the Playboy Mansion West in LA. Hef had it customized in kind of a way that nobody had ever seen before. He had this giant indoor pool, an underwater tiki bar, like a fireman's pole, a bowling alley.
So while she was in Chicago for a photo shoot for the centerfold, her life at Playboy really seemed like a nonstop party. She was hanging out and partying with all kinds of rock stars such as Elton John, Rod Stewart, Blackie Lawless from Wasp. And all this attention being paid to her, it had to have been incredible.
When she did her shoot in Chicago, she said it was just like anything you wanted, you could ask for there, you could get it. We brought to you, they catered to you. You were just like an A-list movie star. This was a 20-year-old girl from Arkansas. Just makes your head spin because she is in a totally new, different world and situation.
This was her big moment. You were the Playmate of the Month. That was a really big thing. That wasn't just a pictorial where people were just going through it. It was like, there I am. I'm the one.
I have personal friends who did a lot of photography for Playboy, and they would express to me that many of the women were uncomfortable, insecure, afraid, not Star Stow. She walked into that photography studio ready to go.
It definitely stands out among the history of all the Playboy centerfolds. It's very unique.
The whole motif of the spread was that she was this rock and roll girl, which was incredibly appropriate because that's what she was. There were pictures of rock stars on the walls behind her. She was holding this blue Rickenbacker bass guitar.
If you look at her face, you see this sultry baby face. So it was sort of this combination of the innocence, but yet the sultry, vixen-y vibe. She really saw herself as this radical, kick-bottom kind of rock chick.
Playboy tends to stick to one style with their centerfolds, just like an upscale kind of generic look. And Star very much had a theme. You know, she was trying to get into the music industry. She was dating a very famous musician, so they gave her kind of this glam rock centerfold. It's really nice to read her words in the article and kind of get a feel of who she is and what she was like. Here she says, once in LA, she recalls, while Gene was on stage, I flashed him. I just opened my jacket for a split second and I wasn't wearing anything underneath. Sometimes I just love to be naughty. Sometimes when I'm in the audience watching Gene perform, every once in a while during the concert, it seems like he's looking directly at me and it's such a great feeling. To me, his music is what sex would sound like if you could hear it. A normal Playboy centerfold pictorial would be nude, but you would usually only see a woman from like the front or back.
Star was at the forefront. She was the first one with a tattoo. She was the first one to do the full front, open leg. And it was a turning of everything. It got more and more like soft porn than the tasteful pinup girl thing that they started out with.
When her centerfold came out in 1977 for the month of February, it was huge. She's the most popular girl in America for a month. Star found it very overwhelming because of all the attention. She received a lot of money, and from going from poverty almost to getting anything you want. A lot of people can't handle that.
She probably had the feeling that I've made it and this will last forever. Sadly, that rarely happens in this world because for all the glamour and all the excitement, there is an ugly underbelly breathing beneath the surface.
I think it was hard for Star. This little girl from Arkansas, she didn't know the ways of Hollywood yet. She didn't know about the mansion and what was expected. It was a very, very scary time. It was a dangerous time. Underneath and behind the closed doors. Star didn't understand much about what would happen after she was used up, and there wasn't somebody there to catch her.